There have been many coming out stories in my life. I came out a number of times as a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. I came out as a lesbian. I came out as a trans man and someone who's non-binary. And probably more recently as someone who part of society might label as being disabled. And so there have been lots of coming out. In terms of in the Jewish community, it was extremely painful in South Africa growing up, being involved in a same-sex relationship with Ruthie. I think the community, not all of the community, but quite a lot of the community were quite judgmental, and you could intuit that feeling that you weren't in a relationship that had as much respect as a heterosexual relationship might have. I found that really powerful and impactful and painful.
I did also visit other lesbian groups occasionally, but I did find that there was intolerance towards me as a Jewish lesbian at times. So I found my home in the Jewish lesbian and gay group. On the other hand, I did find also that in some Jewish lesbian circles, I found intolerance too, especially because I had children. And it wasn't the done thing. So the Jewish lesbian and gay group, because it had so many people who were themselves parents, and the children were, it was obvious that the children were part of that, and so that became my lesbian home in a way.
My experience of synagogues were only Orthodox synagogues, which were very opposite to what I felt and what I thought and what I believed in my values. And only a detour via the United States, where I discovered progressive Reform Judaism and a small gay synagogue, I learned that you can combine Judaism with a very modern humanistic approach, value-based, ethical-based, and where I, as I always say, had to leave my brain outside the synagogue when I entered. It was very important for me that women and men were absolutely equal in every regards, that I, as a gay man, had not the need to hide myself. And they told me there's a Reform synagogue in Munich. And when I returned to Munich, I joined the community there and found it was helpful also then to grow spiritually. And I had a wonderful rabbi who helped me in that process.
I won't lie, I've had some horrendous experiences before I was a rabbi and since I was ordained. I would say a third of the questions when I was applying for rabbinical school were about my sexuality. It was 3 days of interviews and a third of the questions were about my sexuality.
When I went home for a South African Union for Progressive Judaism conference and disclosed that I was lesbian, many of the powers that be were really uncomfortable. They didn't have a woman rabbi in South Africa, nochal a lesbian woman rabbi. They could not digest the concept. Not that there weren't people who weren't supportive, but basically that sense of rejection where I was going to serve potentially my own community, or at least somewhere in South Africa, they then sort of said, please stay in the UK. We can't envisage this. And that was unbelievably painful. So coming out has meant risk and also rejection.
I think nowadays people talk about my wife. They will say, your wife, whatever it is, which I don't think they would have said when I first came. And for example, when I was working in Germany, I didn't talk about being gay. The chair people knew because I worked with quite a number of communities. So the chair people knew, and we'd stayed with them and so on, but whenever my wife came to visit, she was just a good friend.
I'm married. I never thought to be married. I never thought that it would be so, at CBST, I used to do weddings all the time, but they weren't legal. And it was, it was considered strange that 2 women or 2 men were standing under a chuppah. And you look at it now and it's legal, and liberal reform and Masorti, it's just a question of marrying 2 Jewish people. I never thought to see that. I can go into a shop and say, I'm in a bit of a rush, in Gold's Green, I'm in a bit of a rush, my husband's in the car outside. Can you imagine? I mean, even maybe 10 years ago, using the H word, the change has been so incredible. And I say all that, but of course we have to be on our guard, because the change, there are people who want to undermine it, including in our own communities. So there has been amazing change, but we have to be on our guard.
My active public gay life has changed in the last 30 years. In the beginning, we were still more or less hiding as being gay and Jewish in the community was still more on the fringes, and today I can see that many, or even all Reform congregations, are inclusive spaces, liberal synagogues, of course, in the same way.
We talk nowadays about intersectionality, is recognising the different, in a sense, identities we carry. The point is we carry them within us and we integrate them. Some people talk about not being able to reconcile their Jewishness and their sexual orientation. And that's because the Jewishness they're inhabiting excludes that sexual orientation. But my whole sort of, everything I've done since I went on the journey into rabbinate has been about bringing those things together, so nothing has to be excluded. So this is who I am in all of those aspects. So my Jewishness impacts on my sexual orientation, my gender. All of those things come together to be the totality of the person I am, and then the person I am is then not complete in itself, because the person I am is then in relation to other people, as Buba's I and thou. That there's a mutuality, reciprocity when other people also put themselves in the position of having that consciousness and awareness that makes them put those things together, not be in separate compartments.
It is almost impossible to express how much I have been transformed as a person and a rabbi through the teachings of Rabbi Lionel Blue, of Rabbi Sheila Shulman, Zichronan Livracha, and of Tikvah. Those 3 have been some of the most foundational people and teachers in my life. Tikvah came to my synagogue when I was 13 for my bat mitzvah. My mum invited her. And that was in a synagogue that was really traditional and very male. To see a female lesbian rabbi on the bimah was everything I thought I knew was like blown open, and she handed me books about feminist thinking of Judaism, and I think that was one of the moments where I was like, this is for me, because I can see myself there.
Sheila I used to meet with, and her honesty, it was amazing. She would just bare her soul, pain and all. And I loved her mind, and I felt that she was a teacher to me, even though she'd never been a teacher to me.
Growing up with Sheila meant that I always felt that when I came out, I always felt there was a place for me in the Jewish community and a place for me in synagogue. And my friends and colleagues from different faiths did not necessarily have that experience growing up. She really taught me about the importance of what it is to be on the margins, of how to inhabit the idea of, she didn't use the word queerness, but this idea that she had as insider-outsider from her feminist and lesbian understanding of the world and experience, that to be in the margins is a place of potential power, and it enables you to see things in a completely different way than you do if you're right in the establishment and safe and comfortable. And she and Judith Rosenberry really challenged me to not become a square. That's what Sheila always said when I went off to be a rabbi, don't become a square, Robin.
And that was really, like, it's a small statement, but it's powerful.
What I loved about Lionel was the way he was so honest about struggling with sexuality, faith, and that had a big effect upon me, upon the way I felt that it was okay to be totally open in the way one struggles.
What does inclusion mean? It doesn't mean we're being very nice and we've let you in. No, you haven't let me in. First of all, I've let myself in. My action has enabled me to be in. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. And also, coming in means I bring something that transforms what the in is.
There is so much that LGBT plus people can bring to spirituality, to Judaism, to seeing ritual, text in a different light, coming at it from different perspectives, asking questions that other people may not have considered, bringing a life experience that actually I think can empower congregants as well. And it says to any LGBT plus youth or anyone of any age and community, we are here. We deserve to be here. We deserve to be celebrated as any other human being does. And sharing our journeys, I think, is really crucial because it makes it empowering but also permissive for other people to feel they can be who they are.
One of my favourite passages is the beginning of Truma, Exodus chapter 25, when it says, every person whose heart is willing should bring their gift for the building of the Mikdash, the sanctuary. So, and there are all these gorgeous colours, purple and blue and scarlet and that's what we are. We're all these individuals with these gifts to share.
I also think that the fact that there are so many of us LGBTQiA plus Rabbonim out there is remarkable. And really important as role models for other people in terms of possibility and potential.
Bring your gift, everybody bring their gift for the building of community. Community needs to be on the basis of individuals with willing hearts bringing their gifts together. We need both. We need that embrace.
I have never been closeted. Like if someone Googled me, there's articles I've written for the JC about gay marriage and things like that. But I've often been quiet about my orientation in congregational life because I've had experiences where I've been told to be quiet, and I've had experiences where I've been told by very senior people in the movements that I have to be a certain kind of lesbian in order to get jobs, in order to be accepted.
Also living in an environment which is very demonizing and being ramped up in terms of the demonization of trans and non-binary people. And I hope that with more students coming through the college and more Rabbonim being ordained who are trans and non-binary, that will also mean something significant for progressive Judaism, for the wider Jewish world, but also for congregants who are going on their own journeys and who see that this is possible. Yes, there are risks. Yes, the way is not paved easily. Yes, you have to knock on doors and try to dismantle barriers. And, you know, I hope that the future will be less like that and that people will be more accepting of such a small percentage of the population who other people feel incredibly threatened by.
This is a really painful topic, isn't it? Have things changed in the last few years around sexuality and Judaism? I think as with everything, it's like a nuanced answer. Like, yeah, and absolutely not. Our world, and like the British context and many other places, is deeply, I said it before, deeply homophobic, transphobic, difficult space to be in. It is primarily like heteronormative, and it's those voices and creating spaces that are safe and inclusive. I think we've got a really long way to go. And there's some amazing work being done, and I think we're well on our way towards it. I think that partly having the teachers that we've had and the students coming out of Leo Beck helps, because then, you know, we're trained and have conversations and understandings of the world that then come into communities. And I think that communities are crying out to be able to replicate the diversity and energy that's in the entire world and in our society that we don't find in our communities. So I think we've got quite a long way to go to break down some of the kind of oppressive systems that we find ourselves in, and the stories that keep lids on things, and like authentic Judaism, and this is what it looks and, you know, smells and feels like, to break that down. But I think we're getting there.
I think being othered by society, feeling quite marginalised, has meant that I've needed to try and find safe spaces to be me. And I think that's what's really crucial about having LGBTQIA plus rabbis out there, that there are safe people and hopefully safe communities as well, where you can be who you are. I think my sexuality definitely in South Africa, and with what happened here in one of the communities, meant that I felt that I wasn't really treated with the respect I felt any human being should have, and shouldn't have to justify themselves. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the SAUPJ never asked male rabbis what their sexual orientation was. But then when they heard that I was involved with Ruthie, had a big gasp and a surprise, and even my own rabbi felt almost betrayed that I hadn't in any graphic detail discussed my sexuality with him. Well, actually, you have to accept people for where they're at and for the journeys that they're on. You can't expect people to fulfill your criteria. You have to respect where they're at.